Hello. Hello, hello. Hello. I gave my best to I gave my best to prepare some stuff. I hope you like it. I hope you like it. I also I have the book in front of me and I'm ready. I bookmarked the page and everything. I got my shit sorted. Hi there. How you doing? Are you comfy yet? Okay, yeah, so Call of Cthulhu is still winning. The poll is pretty much over. In case we're quicker than expected, I planned an hour for this stream. So in case we're quicker than expected, I'm gonna read the Legend of Sleepy Hollow as well. Me eat moop moop. Have you eaten today? I did. I had Borgar. Katem's background is a mood. Hey, I bought it before stream because I wanted something fitting. It's by Hoshi Art. I wanted Color Out of Space. We can still do that. Color Out of Space was last. I think it's because it's kind of niche. But I'll keep it in mind for the next one because I still want to read it myself. So at some point it's gonna be a thing. Don't worry. Is the music alright? Is the volume too high, too low? Poor girl Aurelian, the patty type. Wait, what? You confuse me. Oh yeah, by the way, I muted alert sounds. They're still gonna show up. I just muted them. Shut the fuck up. Sorry, my Alexa popped off. So yeah, I muted alert sounds so we don't get disturbed, so we can get comfy, and if anyone wants to sleep so they don't get awakened. And I turned off sound alerts for the same reason. Those aren't gonna show up either, so don't waste your money. Okay. Lorgar Aurelian, the Palatine Phoenix, is the original? Wait, what? I'm confused. But yeah, wait, let me flip open the page first. I have both books here because it's two different books. I have the Necronomicon and I have like a bedtime story book, which funnily enough has like spooky stories only. So yeah, that's a thing. Oh yeah, also, the book in front of me, some of you may have witnessed it. Well, its creation. This is Sappy. I'm gonna explain more about Sappy. It's not that deep, but you're gonna know more about Sappy soon-ish. But yeah, the book's name is Sappy. and I made an acid just for this. So yeah. Bedtime spooky time? Yes! It's literally called, wait, it's literally called Bedtime Stories. Every Man's Pocket Classics, and it's, I believe it's only spooky stories in there. It's like, wait, maybe some, I know there's some Neil Gaiman in there. The Thing in the Forest, Young Goodman Brown, Troll Bridge, The Poacher, The Sailor Boy's Tale, The Bottle Imp, oh that sounds cute. The Industrious Tailor, The Dragon Night, Where Tides Ebb and Flow, The Night Face Up. I think it's spooky stories only, so yeah. That's also where I have Sleepy Hollow. Oh, there's also Benjamin Button in there, huh? Huh. The way you see Borgar, just, you know, it reminded me of him. Okay. Let me flip this fat fucking book open. Bedtime is the best time of day, that's why I do it all day. Let's go. Let's go. That's a good thing. The only downside to the stream is that I'm probably gonna try to not interact too much with chat. To not disturb the story too much, unless there's like a pause or something. Or we want to make theories, okay? This is my first time ever doing a proper reading stream, so we'll have to figure some stuff out. That and rare hereditary diseases, but you know, wait, what? Oh, you did tell me about that. Never mind. But yeah, this is we're learning. Also, I put the appropriate bat on my head. If we end up getting to Sleepy Hollow as well, I'm gonna put up the pumpkin bat. So, yeah. Let me just wrap my sleeves up. Okay. Is the music volume alright? Is it too quiet? Is it too loud? Probably too quiet, if anything. Is it? I want the pretty colors. We can read the pretty colors another time. I don't think we can manage 3 stories. Maybe we can manage 2, depends. I'm not sure how fast this will go. Hey there! Okay, since you haven't complained yet, I'm gonna assume the music is alright. Okay. Then I shall start, I think. This is new for me, so sorry. Let me put my very fitting Kirito bookmark to the side. Okay. Also, sorry if my voice gets a little fucked on the way. I'm still kind of sick. Excuse me, what bookmark? It's a Kirito bookmark. Fight me. Love your cat mug. Thank you. It's by don't let me lie. It's by oh wait, did I bookmark it on Twitter? I have it in the file name. One sec. I did make it myself. It's by __ online. They made amazing assets. A bunch of these are by them. The spiders and the spider webs and the lights as well. The background is by Hoshiart. I'll fucking fight you on this right as soon as I catch the next train to hell. That's okay. That's okay. It's okay. Fighting is fun. They did a great job. They did. They did. These are amazing. I'm so glad I found them. Okay. The Call of Cthulhu. Found among the papers of the late Francis Wayland Thurston of Boston. Of such great powers or beings there may be... Of such great powers or beings there may be conceivably a Wait, hold up. Wait, did the alerts show up for you? Did you hear the sound? Also, hello! Thank you for the follow, RC69K. We're throwing hands, always. Did you hear the sound, just so I know? Because I still hear it, but that might be just me, because I muted desktop audio. on OBS, but I didn't turn it off. I think you didn't. Okay, good. Everything according to Keikaku. I mean cake, yeah. Of such great powers or beings, there may be conceivably a survival of a hugely remote period when consciousness was manifested, perhaps in shapes and forms long since withdrawn before the tide of advancing humanity. Forms of which poetry and legend alone have caught a flying memory and called them gods, monsters, mythical beings of all sorts and kinds. Chapter 1: The Horror in Clay. The most merciful thing in the world, I think, is the... Thank you for the 100 bits. Thank you for the 100 bits, thank you for the test. The most merciful thing in the world, I think, is the inability of the human mind to correlate all its contents. We live on a placid island of ignorance in the midst of black seas of infinity, and it was not meant that we should voyage far. The sciences, each straining in its own direction, have hitherto harmed us little, but someday the piecing together of dissociated knowledge will open up such terrifying vistas of reality and of our frightful position therein, that we shall either go mad from the revelation, or flee from the deadly light into the peace and safety of a new dark age. The audio is good, by the way, nice, thank you. Theosophists have guessed at the awesome grandeur of the cosmic cycle wherein our world and human race form transient incidents. They have hinted at strange survival in terms which would freeze the blood if not masked by a bland optimism. But it is not from them that there came the single glimpse of forbidden aeons, which chills me when I think of it, and maddens me when I dream of it. That glimpse, like all dread glimpses of truth, flashed out from an accidental piecing together of separated things. In this case, an old newspaper item and the notes of a dead professor. I hope that no one else will accomplish this piecing out. Certainly, if I live, I shall never knowingly supply a link in so hideous a chain. I think that the professor too intended to keep silent regarding the part that he knew, and that he would have destroyed his notes had not suddenly death seized him. My knowledge of the thing began in the winter of 1926 to 27, with the death of my great-uncle, George Gamel Angle, Professor Emeritus of Semitic Languages in Brown University, Providence, Rhode Island. Professor Angle was widely known as an authority on ancient inscriptions and had frequently been resorted to by the heads of prominent museums, so that his passing at the age of 92 may be recalled by many. Locally, interest was intensified by the obscurity of the cause of death. The professor had been stricken whilst returning from the Newport boat, falling suddenly, as witnesses said, after having been jostled by a nautical-looking bad word who had come from one of the queer dark courts on the precipitous hillside which formed a shortcut from the waterfront to the deceased's home in William Street. Physicians were unable to find any visible disorder, but concluded after perplexed debate that some obscure lesion of the heart, induced by the brisk ascent of so steep a hill by so elderly a man, was responsible for the end. At the time, I saw no reason to dissent from this dictum, but latterly I am inclined to wonder, and more than wonder. As my great-uncle's heir and executor, for he died a childless widower, I was expecting to go over his papers with some thoroughness, and for that purpose moved his entire set of files and boxes to my quarters in Boston. Much of the material which I correlated will be later published by the American Archaeological Society, but there was one box which I found exceedingly puzzling, and which I felt much averse from showing to other eyes. It had been locked, and I did not find the key till it occurred to me to examine the personal ring which the professor carried always in his pocket. Then, indeed, I succeeded in opening it, but when I did so seemed only to be confronted by a greater and more closely locked barrier. For what could be the meaning of the queer clay bas-relief? And the disjointed jottings, ramblings, and cuttings which I found? Had my uncle in his latter years become credulous of the most superficial impostures? I resolved to search out the eccentric sculptor responsible for this apparent disturbance of an old man's peace of mind. The bas-relief, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, sorry, was a rough rectangle, less than an inch thick and about 5 by 6 inches in area, obviously of modern origin. Its designs, however, were far from modern in atmosphere and suggestion, for although the vagaries of cubism and futurism are many and wild, they do not often reproduce that cryptic regularity which lurks in prehistoric writing. And writing of some kind, the bulk of these things seemed certainly to be. Though my memory, despite much familiarity with the papers and collections of my uncle, failed in any way to identify this particular species or even hint at its remotest affiliations. Above these apparent hieroglyphics was a figure of evidently pictorial intent, though its impressionistic execution forbade a very clear idea of its nature. It seemed to be a sort of monster, or symbol representing a monster, of a form which only a diseased fancy could conceive. If I say that my somewhat extravagant imagination yielded simultaneous pictures of an octopus, a dragon, and a human caricature, I shall not be unfaithful to the spirit of the thing. A pulpy, tentacled head surmounted a grotesque and scaly body with rudimentary wings, but it was the general outline of the whole thing which made it most shockingly frightful. Behind the figure was a vague suggestion of a cyclopean architectural background. The writing accompanying this oddity was, aside from a stack of press cuttings, in Professor Engel's most recent hand, and made no pretension to literary style. What seemed to be the main document was headed Cthulhu Cult, in characters painstakingly printed to avoid the erroneous reading of a word so unheard of. This manuscript was divided into 2 sections, the first of which was headed 1925, Dream and Dream Work of H.A. Wilcox, 7 Thomas Street, Providence, R.I., and the second, Narrative of Inspector John R. Legrasse, 121 Bienville Street, New Orleans, LA, at 1908 AAS, MTG? Notes on same and Professor Webb's Act. The other manuscript papers were all brief notes, some of them accounts of the queer dreams of different persons, some of them citations from theosophical books and magazines, notably W. Scott Eliot's Atlantis and the Lost Lemuria, and the rest comments on long-surviving secret societies and hidden cults, with references to passages in such mythological and anthropological source books as Fraser's Golden Bow and Miss Murray's Witch Cult in Western Europe. The cuttings largely alluded to outre, mental illness, and outbreaks of group folly or mania in the spring of 1925. The first half of the principal manuscript told a very peculiar tale. It appears that on March 1st, 1925, a thin, dark young man of neurotic and excited aspect had called upon Professor Engel, bearing the singular clay bas-relief, which was then exceedingly damp and fresh. His card bore the name of Henry Anthony Wilcox, and my uncle had recognized him as the youngest son of an excellent family slightly known to him, who had latterly been studying sculpture at the Rhode Island School of Design, and living alone at the Fleur de Lis building near that institution. Wilcox was a precocious youth, of known genius but great eccentricity, and had from childhood excited attention through the strange stories and odd dreams he was in the habit of relating. He called himself psychically hypersensitive, but the state folk of the ancient commercial city dismissed him as merely queer. Never mingling much with his kind, he had dropped gradually from social visibility, and was now known only to a small group of aesthetes from other towns. Even the Providence Art Club, anxious to preserve its conservatism, had found him quite hopeless. On the occasion of the visit, ran the professor's manuscript, the sculptor abruptly asked for the benefit of his host's archaeological knowledge in identifying the hieroglyphics on the bas-relief. He spoke in a dreamy, stilted manner, which suggested pose and alienated sympathy, and my uncle showed some sharpness in replying, for the conspicuous freshness of the tablet implied kinship with anything but archaeology. Young Wilcox's rejoinder, which impressed my uncle enough to make him recall and record in verbatim, was of a fantastically poetic cast, which must have typified his whole conversation, and which I have since found highly characteristic of him, said, "It is new indeed, for I made it last night in a dream of strange cities, and dreams are older than brooding Tyre, or the contemplative Sphinx, or garden-girdled Babylon." It was then that he began that rambling tale which suddenly played upon a sleeping memory and won the fevered interest of my uncle. There had been a slight earthquake tremor the night before, the most considerable felt in New England for some years, and Wilcox's imagination had been keenly affected. Upon retiring, he had had an unprecedented dream of great cyclopean cities of Titan blocks and sky-flung monoliths, all dripping with green ooze and sinister with latent horror. Hieroglyphics had covered the walls and pillars, and from some undetermined point below had come a voice that was not a voice, a chaotic sensation which only fancy could transmute into sound, but which he attempted to render by the almost unpronounceable jumble of letters. Cthulhu Patagon. This verbal jumble was the key to the recollection which excited and disturbed Professor Angle. He questioned the sculpture with scientific minuteness, and studied with almost frantic intensity the bas-relief on which the youth had found himself working, chilled and clad only in his night-clothes, when waking had stolen bewilderingly over him. My uncle blamed his old age. Wilcox afterwards said, for his slowness in recognizing both hieroglyphics and pictorial design. Many of his questions seemed highly out of place to his visitor, especially those which tried to connect the latter with strange cults or societies, and Wilcox could not understand the repeated promises of silence which he was offered in exchange for an admission of membership in some widespread mystical or paganly religious body. When Professor Angle became convinced that the sculptor was indeed ignorant of any cult or system of cryptic lore, he besieged his visitor with demands for future reports of dreams. This bore regular fruit, for after the first interview the manuscript records daily calls of the young man, during which he related startling fragments of nocturnal imagery, whose burden was always some terrible cyclopean visits of dark and dripping stone, with a subterranean voice or intelligence shouting monotonously, in enigmatical sense impacts, uninscribable save as gibberish. The two sounds most frequently repeated are those rendered by the letters Cthulhu and Riley. I'm gonna take a quick sip of water. On March 23rd, the manuscript continued. Wilcox failed to appear, and inquiries at his quarters revealed that he had been stricken with an obscure sort of fever and taken to the home of his family in Waterman Street. He had cried out in the night, arousing several other artists in the building, and had manifested since then only alternations of unconsciousness and delirium. My uncle at once telephoned the family, and from that time forward kept close watch of the case, calling often at the Thayer Street office of Dr. Toby, whom he learned to be in charge. The youth's febrile mind, apparently, was dwelling on strange things, and the doctor shuddered now and then as he spoke of them. They included not only a repetition of what he had formerly dreamed, but touched wildly on a gigantic thing miles high which walked or lumbered about. He at no time fully described this object, but occasionally frantic words, as repeated by Dr. Toby, convinced the professor that it must be identical with the nameless monstrosity he had sought to depict in his dream sculpture. Reference to this object, the doctor added, was invariably a prelude to the young man's subsidence into lethargy. His temperature, oddly enough, was not greatly above normal, but the whole condition was otherwise such as to suggest true fever rather than mental disorder. On April 2nd, at about 3 p.m., every trace of Wilcox's melody suddenly ceased. He sat upright in bed, astonished to find himself at home and completely ignorant of what had happened in dream or reality since the night of March 22nd. Pronounced well by his physician, he returned to his quarters in 3 days. But to Professor Angle, he was of no further assistance. All traces of strange dreaming had vanished with his recovery, and my uncle kept no record of his night thoughts after a week of pointless and irrelevant accounts of thoroughly usual visions. Here, the first part of the manuscript ended, but references to certain of the scattered notes gave me much material for thought. So much, in fact, that only the ingrained skepticism then forming my philosophy can account for my continued distrust of the artist. The notes in question were those descriptive of the dreams of various persons covering the same period as that in which young Wilcox had had his strange visitations. My uncle, it seems, had quickly instituted a prodigiously far-flung body of inquiries amongst nearly all the friends whom he could question without impertinence, asking for nightly reports of the dreams and the dates of any notable visions for some time past. The reception of his request seems to have been varied, but he must, at the very least, have received more responses than any ordinary man could have handled without a secretary. This original correspondence was not preserved, but his notes formed a thorough and really significant digest. Average people in society and business, New England's traditional salt of the earth, gave an almost completely negative result, though scattered cases of uneasy but formless nocturnal impressions appear here and there, always between March 23rd and April 2nd, the period of young Wilcox's delirium. Scientific men were little more affected, though 4 cases of vague description suggest fugitive glimpses of strange landscapes, and in one case there is mentioned a dread of something abnormal. It was from the artists and poets that the pertinent answers came, and I know that panic would have broken loose had they been able to compare notes. As it was, lacking their original letters, I half suspected the compiler of having asked leading questions, or of having edited the correspondence in corroboration of what he had latently resolved to see. That is why I continued to feel that Wilcox, somehow cognizant of the old data which my uncle had possessed, had been imposing on the veteran scientist. These responses from aesthetes told a disturbing tale. From February 28th to April 2nd, a large proportion of them had dreamed very bizarre things, the intensity of the dreams being immeasurably the stronger during the period of the sculptor's delirium. Over a fourth of those who reported anything reported scenes and half-sounds not unlike those which Wilcox had described, and some of the dreamers confessed acute fear of the gigantic nameless thing visible towards the last. One case, which the note describes with emphasis, was very sad. The subject, a widely known architect with leanings towards theosophy and occultism, went violently insane on the date of young Wilcox's seizure, and expired several months later after incessant screamings to be saved from some escaped denizen of hell. Had my uncle referred to these cases by name instead of merely by number, I should have attempted some corroboration and personal investigation, but as it was, I succeeded in tracing down only a few. All of these, however, bore out the notes in full. I have often wondered if all the objects of the professor's questioning felt as puzzled as did this fraction. It is well that no explanation shall ever reach them. The press cuttings, as I have intimated, touched on cases of panic, mania, and eccentricity during the given period. Professor Angle must have employed a cutting bureau, for the number of extracts was tremendous, and the sources scattered throughout the globe. Here was a nocturnal suicide in London, where a lone sleeper had leaped from a window after a shocking cry. Here, likewise, a rambling letter to the editor of a paper in South America, where a fanatic deduces a dire future from visions he has seen. A dispatch from California describes a theosophist colony as donning white robes en masse for some glorious fulfillment which never arrives, whilst items from India speak guardedly of serious native unrest towards the end of March. Voodoo orgies multiply in Haiti, and African outposts report ominous mutterings. Hi! American officers in the Philippines find certain tribes bothersome about this time, and New York policemen are mobbed by hysterical Levantines on the night of March 22nd to 23rd. The west of Ireland, too, is full of wild rumor and legendary, and a fantastic painter named Ardois Bonneau hangs a blasphemous dream landscape in the Paris Spring Salon of 1926. And so numerous are the recorded troubles in insane asylums that only a miracle can have stopped the medical fraternity from noting strange parallelisms and drawing mystified conclusions. A weird bunch of cuttings, all told, and I can at this date scarcely envisage the callous rationalism with which I set them aside. But I was then convinced that young Wilcox had known of the older matters mentioned by the professor. Okay, one chapter down. Now I can say hello. Hello, everyone! Really bad word? Yeah, a really bad word that started with N. Lovecraft was kind of known for his not so goodness in that regard. Hippopotamus Lovestraft was a bit narrow-minded even. Yeah, pretty much. Hello, Ray! Also, thank you for the follow, Muffin the Bunny. Hi, Tuhubabuhu. Little Queen, yeah, he's a little queen in that regard. I'm gonna drink a little. And we may continue. Chapter 2. The Tale of Inspector Legras. The older matters which had made the sculptor's dream and bas-relief so significant to my uncle formed the subject of the second half of his long manuscript. Once before, it appears, Professor Angle had seen the hellish outlines of the nameless monstrosity, puzzled over the unknown hieroglyphics, and heard the ominous syllables which can be rendered only as Cthulhu. And all this in so stirring and horrible a connection that it is small wonder he pursued young Wilcox with queries and demands for data. This earlier experience had come in 1908, 17 years before, when the American Archaeological Society held its annual meeting in St. Louis. Professor Angle, as befitted one of his authority and attainments, had had a prominent part in all the deliberations, and was one of the first to be approached by the several outsiders who took advantage of the convocation to offer questions for correct answering and problems for expert solution. The chief of these outsiders, and in a short time the focus of interest for the entire meeting, was a commonplace-looking middle-aged man who had traveled all the way from New Orleans for certain special information unobtainable from any local source. His name was John Raymond Legras, and he was by profession an inspector of police. With him, he bore the subject of his visit, a grotesque, repulsive, and apparently very ancient stone statuette, whose origin he was at a loss to determine. It must not be fancied that Inspector Legras had the least interest in archaeology. On the contrary, his wish for enlightenment was prompted by purely professional considerations. The statuette, idol, fetish, or whatever it was, had been captured some months before in the wooded swamps south of New Orleans during a raid on a supposed voodoo meeting, and so singular and hideous were the rites connected with it that the police could not but realize that they had stumbled on a dark cult totally unknown to them, and infinitely more diabolic than even the bad sentence, let's just skip that one. Yeah, Lovecraft has his problems. Good stories overall, but he has his problems. Let's just skip that sentence. I'm trying to filter out the bad stuff as much as I can without taking context. But yeah. Of its origin, apart from the erratic and unbelievable tales extorted from the captured members, absolutely nothing was to be discovered. Hence the anxiety of the police for any antiquarian lore which might help them to place a frightful symbol, and through it, track down the cult to its fountainhead. Inspector Legras was scarcely prepared for the sensation which his offering created. One sight, of the thing had been enough to throw the assembled men of science into a state of tense excitement, and they lost no time in crowding around him to gaze at the diminutive figure, whose utter strangeness and air of genuinely abysmal antiquity hinted so potently at unopened and archaic vistas. No recognized school of sculpture had animated this terrible object, yet centuries and even thousands of years seemed recorded in its dim and greenish surface of unplaceable stone. The figure, which was finally passed down slowly from man to man for close and careful study, was between 7 and 8 inches in height, and of exquisitely artistic workmanship. It represented a monster of vaguely anthropoid outline, but with an octopus-like head, whose face was a mass of feelers, a scaly, rubbery-looking body, prodigious claws on hind and forefeet, and long, narrow wings behind. This thing, which seemed instinct with a fearsome and unnatural malignancy, was of a somewhat bloated corpulence, and squatted evilly on a rectangular block or pedestal covered with undecipherable characters. The tips of the wings touched the back edge of the block. The seat occupied the center, whilst the long curved claws of the doubled-up, crouching hind legs gripped the front edge and extended a quarter of the way down towards the bottom of the pedestal. The cephalopod head was bent forward so that the ends of the facial feelers brushed the backs of huge forepaws which clasped the croucher's elevated knees. The aspect of the whole was abnormally lifelike, and the more subtly fearful because its source was so totally unknown. Its vast, awesome, and incalculable age was unmistakable, yet not one link did it show with any known type of art belonging to civilization's youth, or indeed any other time. Totally separate and apart, its very material was a mystery. For the soapy greenish-black stone with its golden or iridescent flecks and striations resembled nothing familiar to geology or mineralogy. The characters along the base were equally baffling, and no member present, despite a representation of half the world's expert learning in this field, could form the least notion of even the remotest linguistic kinship. They, like the subject and material, belonged to something horribly remote and distinct from mankind as we know it, something frightfully suggestive of old and unhallowed cycles of life in which our world and our conceptions have no part. And yet, as the members severally shook their heads and confessed defeat at the inspector's problem, there was one man in that gathering who suspected a touch of bizarre familiarity in the monstrous shape and writing, and who presently told with some diffidence of the odd trifle he knew. This person was the late William Channing Webb, professor of anthropology in Princeton University and an explorer of no slight note. Professor Webb had been engaged 48 years before in a tour of Greenland and Iceland in search of some runic inscriptions, which he failed to unearth, and whilst high up on the West Greenland coast, had encountered a singular tribe or cult of degenerate... Bad word? This time for a different kind of people? Whose religion, a curious form of devil worship, chilled him with its deliberate bloodthirstiness and repulsiveness. It was a faith of which other... Bad word again? Fucking hell, Lovecraft, can you just chill? Man. Of which other word knew little, and which they mentioned only with shudders, saying that it had come down from horribly ancient eons, before ever the world was made. Besides nameless rites and human sacrifices, there were certain queer hereditary rituals, addressed to Supreme Elder Devil, or Tornasuk. And of this Professor Webb had taken a careful phonetic copy from an aged Angacox, very sorry for butchering it, or wizard priest, expressing the sounds in Roman letters as best as he knew how. But just now, of prime significance, was the fetish which this cult had cherished, and around which they danced when the aurora leaped high over the ice cliffs. It was, the professor stated, a very crude bas-relief of stone, comprising a hideous picture and some cryptic writing. and as far as he could tell, it was a rough parallel in all essential features of the bestial thing now lying before the meeting. These data, received with suspense and astonishment by the assembled members, proved doubly exciting to Inspector Legrasse, and he began at once to ply this informant with questions. Having noted and copied an oral ritual among the swamp cult worshippers his men had arrested, he besought the professor to remember as best he might the syllables taken down amongst the diabolist words. There then followed an exhaustive comparison of details, and a moment of really odd silence when both detective and scientist agreed on the virtual identity of the phrase common to two hellish rituals so many worlds of distance apart. What, in substance, both the Eskimo... Fuck! Now I said it! Fuck! Man! The wizards and the Louisiana swamp priests had chanted to their kindred idols was something very like this. The word divisions being guessed at from traditional breaks in the phrases chanted aloud. Thungloi... this is gonna... Thungloi munguvna Cthulhu Riley Mgunnagel Funtang. Legrasse at one point in advance of Professor Webb, for several among his ex-prisoners had repeated to him what older celebrants had told them the words meant. This text, as given, read something like this. In his house at Riley, dead Cthulhu waits dreaming. And now, in response to a general urgent demand, Inspector Legrasse related as fully as possible his experience with the swamp worshippers, telling a story to which I could see my uncle attach profound significance. It savored of the wildest dreams of myth-maker and theosophist, and disclosed an astonishing degree of cosmic imagination among such half-caste and pariahs as might be least expected to possess it. I am unsure if... It's kind of hard to read this because you can't just read it out. You kind of have to think about what's okay and what's not, so I'm sorry in advance. On November 1st, 1907, there had come to New Orleans police a frantic summons from the swamp and lagoon country to the south. The squatters there, mostly primitive but good-natured descendants of Lafitte's men, were in the grip of stark terror from an unknown thing which had stolen upon them in the night. It was voodoo apparently, but voodoo of a more terrible sort than they had ever known, and some of their women and children had disappeared since the malevolent tom-tom had begun its incessant beating far within the black haunted woods, where no dweller ventured. There were insane shouts, and harrowing screams, soul-chilling chants and dancing devil flames. And, the frightened messenger added, the people could stand it no more. So a body of 20 police, filling 2 carriages and an automobile, had set out in the late afternoon with a shivering squatter as a guide. At the end of the passable road they alighted, and for miles splashed on in silence through the terrible cypress woods where day never came. Ugly roots and malignant hanging nooses of Spanish moss beset them, and now and then a pile of dank stones or fragments of a rotting wall, intensified by its hint of morbid habitation, a depression which every malformed tree and every fungus islet combined to create. At length the squatter settlement, a miserable huddle of huts, hove in sight, and hysterical dwellers ran out to cluster around the group of bobbing lanterns. The muffled beat of tom-toms was now faintly audible far, far ahead, and a curling shriek came at infrequent intervals when the wind shifted. A reddish glare, too, seemed to filter through the pale undergrowth beyond endless avenues of forest night. Reluctant even to be left alone again, each one of the cowed squatters refused point-blank to advance another inch towards the scene of unholy worship. So Inspector Legrasse and his 19 colleagues plunged on unguided into black arcades of horror that none of them had ever trod before. The region now entered by the police was one of traditionally evil repute, substantially unknown and untraversed by men. There were legends of a hidden lake, unglimpsed by mortal sight, in which dwelt a huge formless white polypus thing with luminous eyes, and squatters whispered that bat-winged devils flew up out of caverns in inner earth to worship it at midnight. They said it had been there before Dilberville, before La Salle, before the people, men, and before even the wholesome beasts and birds of the woods. It was nightmare itself, and to see it was to die. But it made men dream, and so they knew enough to keep away. The present voodoo orgy was indeed on the merest fringe of this abhorred area, but that location was bad enough. Hence perhaps the very place of the worship had terrified the squatters more than the shocking sounds and incidents. Oh, hello! Calda's coffee shop, hello! Yeah, he had a bunch of issues, yeah. Thank you. One of his latest stories. I mean, I think I can pull through, maybe, hopefully. Although it turns out it's longer than I thought. I checked the pages, but I wasn't sure how long it was gonna take to read. So yeah, it's almost been an hour already, and we're like halfway through. This one in particular is literally his most inclusive one. Wait, is it? Oh god. Yeah, it's kind of hard. I'm gonna keep reading. I mean, my time's almost up anyways. But yeah, yeah. Only poetry or madness could do justice to the noises heard by Legras's men as they plowed on through the black morass towards the red glare and the muffled tom-toms. There are vocal qualities peculiar to men, and vocal qualities peculiar to beasts, and it is terrible to hear the one when the source should yield the other. Animal fury and orgastic license here whip themselves to demoniac heights by howls and squawking ecstasies that tore and reverberated through those nighted woods like pestilential tempests from the gulfs of hell. Now and then the less organized feels like a bad word, I'm not sure, ululations would cease, and from what seemed a well-drilled chorus of hoarse voices would rise and sing-song, chant, that hideous phrase or ritual. Fungului mulkvanaf, Cthulhu Riley, Vagnagel Funtang. Then the men, having reached a spot where the trees were thinner, came suddenly in sight of the spectacle itself. 4 of them reeled, 1 fainted, and 2 were shaken into a frantic cry, which the mad cacophony of the orgy fortunately deadened. Legras dashed swamp water on the face of the fainting man, and all stood trembling and nearly hypnotized with horror. In a natural glade of the swamp stood a grassy island of perhaps an acre's extent, clear of trees and tolerably dry. On this now leaped and twisted a more indescribable horde of human abnormality than any. But I'm not sure if I can say that. Void of clothing, this hybrid spawn. Lovecraft, why? Why are you like this? Why are you like this? Can you not write a normal book? For fuck's sake. Do I just give up? I didn't think it would be this bad. I knew it was bad, but I didn't know it was this bad. You literally picked the worst one for being TOS friendly. Yeah, I'm starting to notice. I never read it in full. And I knew Lovecraft in general was kind of bad. But fucking hell. Aww. Thank you for the 500 biddies, Tohu Babohu. I got a short one without the many no words in it if you want. I mean, you can tell me which one. This book has multiple. Because I feel like I shouldn't go on. I feel like I shouldn't go on. 20 dagon? Oh, okay. Oh, I actually read that one. Okay, let's read that one. That's actually the first one in the book that I have. Fuck Cthulhu. Why can Lovecraft not be normal? Okay, I updated the title. God fucking damn it, I didn't think it would be this bad. I'm very sorry. Very, very sorry, actually. Also, hi, Pan! Because Cthulhu is one of his older stories, he really mellowed out. Okay, good. Still left him a bit of a dick, but he did mellow out a lot. Good. Man, I knew he was bad, but I didn't know he was this bad. Okay. Let's forget what I did so far. Okay. I didn't know it was this bad. I'm sorry. I should have asked someone who read it before, because I thought it would be fun to read it, but never mind, I guess. No, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Thank you for the hint. Also, hi, Eden. Okay. Dagon. I am writing this under an appreciable mental strain, since by tonight I shall be no more. Penniless and at the end of my supply of the drug which alone makes life endurable, I can bear the torture no longer, and shall cast myself from this garret window into the squalid street below. Do not think from my slavery to morphine that I am a weakling or a degenerate. When you have read these hastily scrawled pages, you may guess, though never fully realize, why it is that I must have forgetfulness or death. It was in one of the most open and least frequented parts of the broad Pacific that the packet of which I was supercargo fell a victim to the German sea raider. The Great War was then at its very beginning, and the ocean forces of the Hun had not completely sunk to their later degradation, so that our vessel was made a legitimate prize, whilst we of her crew were treated with all the fairness and consideration due us as naval prisoners. So liberal, indeed, was the discipline of our captors, that 5 days after we were taken I managed to escape alone in a small boat, with water and provisions for a good length of time. When I finally found myself adrift and free, I had but little idea of my surroundings. Never a competent navigator, I could only guess vaguely by the sun and stars that I was somewhat south of the equator. Of the longitude I knew nothing, and no island or coastline was in sight. The weather kept fair, and for uncounted days I drifted aimlessly beneath the scorching sun, waiting either for some passing ship or to be cast on the shores of some habitable land. But neither ship nor land appeared, and I began to despair in my solitude upon the heaving vastness of unbroken blue. The change happened whilst I slept. Its details I shall never know, for my slumber For my slumber, though troubled and dream-infested, was continuous. When at last I awaked, it was to discover myself half sucked into a slimy expanse of hellish black mire, which extended about me in monotonous undulations as far as I could see, and in which my boat lay grounded some distance away. Though one might well imagine that my first sensation would be of wonder at so prodigious and an unexpected transformation of scenery, I was in reality more horrified than astonished, for there was in the air and in the rotting soil a sinister quality which chilled me to the very core. The region was putrid, with the carcasses of decaying fish, and of other less describable things which I saw protruding from the nasty mud of the unending plain. Perhaps I should not hope to convey in mere words the unmutterable hideousness that can dwell in absolute silence and barren immensity. There was nothing within hearing, and nothing in sight save a vast reach of black slime. Yet the very completeness of the stillness and the homogeneity of the landscape oppressed me with a nauseating fear. The sun was blazing down from a sky, which seemed to me almost as black in its cloudless cruelty as though reflecting the inky marsh beneath my feet. As I crawled into the stranded boat, I realized that only one theory could explain my position. Through some unprecedented volcanic upheaval, a portion of the ocean floor must have been thrown to the surface, exposing regions which for innumerable millions of years had lain hidden under unfathomable watery depths. So great was the extent of the new land which had risen beneath me, that I could not detect the faintest noise of the surging ocean, strain my ears as I might. Nor were there any seafowl to prey upon the dead things. For several hours I sat thinking, or brooding in the boat, which lay upon its side and afforded a slight shade as the sun moved across the heavens. As the day progressed, the ground lost some of its stickiness and seemed likely to dry sufficiently for traveling purposes in a short time. That night I slept but little, and the next day I made for myself a pack containing food and water, preparatory to an overland journey in search of the vanished sea and possible rescue. On the third morning, I found the soil dry enough to walk upon with ease. The odor of the fish was maddening, but I was too much concerned with graver things to mind so slight an evil, and set out boldly for an unknown goal. All day I forged steadily westward, guided by a faraway hummock, which rose higher than any other elevation on the rolling desert. That night I encamped, and on the following day still traveled toward the hummock, though that object seemed scarcely nearer than when I had first espied it. By the fourth evening, I attained the base of the mound, which turned out to be much higher than it had appeared from a distance, an intervening valley setting out in a sharper relief from the general surface. Too weary to ascend, I slept in the shadow of the hill. I know not why my dreams were so wild that night, but ere the waning and fantastically gibbous moon had risen far above the eastern plain, I was awake in a cold perspiration, determined to sleep no more. Such visions as I had experienced were too much for me to endure again, and in the glow of the moon I saw how unwise I had been to travel by day. Without the glare of the parching sun, my journey would have cost me less energy. Indeed, I now felt quite able to perform the ascent which had deterred me at sunset. Picking up my pack, I started for the crest of the eminence. I have said that the unbroken monotony of the rolling plain was the source of vague horror to me, but I think my horror was greater when I gained the summit of the mound and looked down to the other side, into an unimmeasurable pit or canyon, whose black recesses the moon had not yet soared high enough to illumine. I felt myself on the edge of the world, peering over the rim into a fathomless chaos of eternal night. Through my terror ran curious reminiscences of Paradise Lost and Satan's hideous climb through the unfashioned realms of darkness. As the moon climbed higher in the sky, I began to see that the slopes of the valley were not quite so perpendicular as I had imagined. Ledges and outcroppings of rock afforded fairly easy footholds for a descent, whilst after a drop of a few hundred feet, the declivity became very gradual. Urged on by an impulse which I cannot definitely analyze, I scrambled with difficulty down the rocks and stood on the gentler slope beneath, gazing into the Stygian deeps where no light had yet penetrated. All at once, my attention was captured by a vast and singular object on the opposite slope, which rose steeply about 100 yards ahead of me. An object that gleamed whitely in the newly bestowed rays of the ascending moon. That was merely a gigantic piece of stones, I soon assured myself, but I was conscious of a distinct impression that its contour and position were not altogether the work of nature. The closest scrutiny filled me with sensations I cannot express, for despite its enormous magnitude and its position in an abyss which had yawned at the bottom of the sea since the world was young, I perceived beyond a doubt that the strange object was a well-shaped monolith, whose massive bulk had known the workmanship and perhaps the worship of living and thinking creatures. Dazed and frightened, yet not without a certain thrill of the scientist or archaeologist's delight, I examined my surroundings more closely. The moon, now near the zenith, shone weirdly and vividly above the towering steeps that hemmed in the chasm, and revealed the fact that a far-flung body of water flowed at the bottom, winding out of sight in both directions and almost lapping my feet as soon as I stood on the slope. Across the chasm, the wavelets washed the base of the cyclopean monolith, on whose surface I could now trace both inscriptions and crude sculptures. The writing was in a system of hieroglyphics unknown to me, and unlike anything I had ever seen in books, consisting for the most part of conventionalized aquatic symbols such as fishes, eels, octopi, crustaceans, mollusks, whales, and the like. Several characters obviously represented marine things, which are unknown to the modern world, but whose decomposing forms I had observed on the ocean-risen plain. It was the pictorial craving, however, that did most to hold me spellbound. Plainly visible across the intervening water on account of their enormous size was an array of bas-reliefs, whose subject would have excited the envy of a Doré. I think that these things were supposed to depict men, at least a certain sort of men, though the creatures were shown disporting like fishes in the waters of some marine grotto, or paying homage at some monolithic shrine, which appeared to be under the waves as well. Of their faces and forms I dare not speak in detail, for the mere remembrance makes me grow faint. Grotesque beyond the imagination of a Poe or a Bulwer, they were damnably human in general outline despite webbed hands and feet, shockingly wide and flabby lips, glassy, bulging eyes, and other features less pleasant to recall. Curiously enough, they seem to have been chiseled badly out of proportion with their scenic background, where one of the creatures was shown in the act of killing a whale represented as but little larger than himself. I remarked, as I say, their grotesqueness and strange size, but in a moment decided that they were merely the imaginary gods of some primitive fishing or seafaring tribe. Some tribe whose last descendant had perished eras before the first ancestor of the Piltdown or Neanderthal man was born. Awestruck at this unexpected glimpse into a past beyond the conception of the most daring anthropologist, I stood musing whilst the moon cast queer reflections on the silent channel before me. Then, suddenly I saw it. With only a slight churning to mark its rise to the surface, the thing slid into view above the dark waters. Vast, Polyphemus-like, and loathsome, it darted like a stupendous monster of nightmares to the monolith, about which it flung its gigantic scaly arms, the while it bowed its hideous head and gave vent to certain measured sounds. I think I went mad then. Of my frantic ascent of the slope and cliff, and of my delirious journey back to the stranded boat, I remember little. I believe I sang a great deal and laughed oddly when I was unable to sing. I have indistinct recollections of a great storm sometime after I reached the boat. At any rate, I know that I heard peals of thunder and other tones which nature utters only in her wildest moods. When I came out of the shadows, I was in a San Francisco hospital, brought thither by the captain of the American ship which had picked up my boat in mid-ocean. In my delirium I had said much, but found that my words had been giving scant attention. Of any land upheaval in the Pacific, my rescuers knew nothing, nor did I deem it necessary to insist upon a thing which I knew they could not believe. Once I sought out a celebrated ethnologist and amused him with peculiar questions regarding the ancient Philistine legend of Dagon, the fish god, but soon perceiving that he was hopelessly conventional, I did not press my inquiries. It is at night, especially when the moon is gibbous and waning, that I see the thing. I tried morphine, but the drug has given only transient surcease, and has drawn me into its clutches as a hopeless slave. So now I am to end it all, having written a full account for the information or the contemptuous amusement of my fellow men. Often I ask myself if it could not all have been a pure phantasm, a mere freak of fever as I lay sun-stricken and raving in the open boat after my escape from the German man of war. This, I ask myself, but ever does there come before me a hideously vivid vision in reply. I cannot think of the deep sea without shuddering at the nameless things that may at this very moment be crawling and floundering on the slimy bed, worshipping their ancient stone idols and carving their own detestable likenesses on submarine obelisks of water-soaked granite. I dream of a day when they may rise above the billows to drag down, in their reeking talons, the remnants of puny, war-exhausted mankind. Of a day when the land shall sink, and the dark ocean floor shall ascend amidst universal pandemonium. The end is near. I hear a noise at the door, as of some immense slippery body lumbering against it. It shall not find me. Got that hand! The window! The window! Da-da-dam! Okay. It was actually... Nurex was right, this was pretty much exactly a 20-minute read. Actually kind of sick. Man, I'm sad about Cthulhu. Genuinely sad. Look up the name of his dog, wasn't it his cat? Oh, I thought it was a cat. Call of Cthulhu is genuinely the worst one. I know now. I know better now. I know better now. 100 funny names for cats is probably a even worse read. Oh god. Oh shoot! Shoot your idea. Read the old Goosebump books. I actually never read those. I think I saw one movie, but I never read those, so maybe I would have to get them though. Wow, would that be something you would be interested in? Let me note it down. Wait. Man, I just should have read fucking Sleepy Hollow. Lovecraft make me angry. Goosebumps. With shadow over inspels, you can at least skip a few pages. Oh god, isn't that bad? Creepypasta time? I think in the future, yeah, once I'm out of books. I think you can get them in PDF. Okay, I'll look it up. Those were popping as a kid? I never read those. Might be interesting. I don't know. But they're kind of long, aren't they? I'll definitely check them out though. I'm just so sad, man. I knew. I'm so mad because I knew Lovecraft was bad, but I wasn't aware that he was this bad, like this so frequently bad, you know? I thought it would be okay, I'm gonna have to skip a few words every story, but like this was more than I expected. You could easily read one in a single stream. Oh, really? Ah. The cat one scared me when younger. Cat one? His later stuff is a lot better. Lovecraft, that is. Yeah, I know that now too. Next time I'll research properly whenever it's Lovecraft. Fuck it. Man, I just wanted to read Cthulhu properly for once because I never read the original. But I do have the book, so I thought it would be a fun idea, but Lovecraft just went and told me, fuck you. Man. But there's a bunch of these in here. So, this book has a pretty big collection of Lovecraft stories, so I'll look up which ones are the safe ones, and we might come back. Goosebump Cat Story? I don't know any of it. Like I said, I never read them. Color Out of Space is, I think, is relatively safe. Should have read that one. Oh man. Okay. Well, spooky time is almost over, so next time we'll be reading fairy tales and legends. Okay. I have to get ready now because there's gonna be collab. The collab is soon. This time, little spoiler, this time on Nano's channel. So if anyone wants to see the collab, I'll be there. It's on Nanoless's channel. Good luck, thank you. Kane, why wait? What are we waiting for? The Goosebump books are pretty short, so that should work. Are they really that short? Damn, Link? In 1 sec. Kane said wait. I don't know why he said wait. Why you say wait? But that's a Discord link. Oh, for the notifications you mean? I'm DMing you something? Okay. Man, I thought today would be really cool. Oh, sick, thank you. That's actually sick. Thank you. But yeah. This was interesting. I was hoping this would have been better. Because I really made an effort to make this cozy and nice and like to read it properly, but Lovecraft ruined my plans. So yeah, next time I guess. But we have a proper reading background now, and we have everything set up, so next time will be easier. Oh, Momochi is live. Let's rate Momochi. She's playing Tormented Souls. So let's do that. But yeah, let me just give you Nano's link real quick. In case you want to watch the collab later. There you go. That is the link. Unless something changed, we'll be there in roughly an hour. Something might have changed. I didn't read yet, but yeah. I think in an hour is the plan. So if you would like to see the collab, make sure to join over there. My pleasure. And yeah, next time I'll do it. I'll do better. I'll do better. Why is Amazon listening to me today, huh? Don't know if you can hear it, but like in the background, it keeps activating. Okay, let's rate Momochi. Let's spam this. You did fine. Thank you. I tried my best. I just didn't. I don't know. I didn't feel like I had to do as much research as I probably should have. I underestimated. I underestimated Lovecraft. Let's just put it like that. So yeah. Next time. Oh, it's because wait. I think I know why. Because of the space. There you go. That should work better. I think. Yeah. That works. Perfect. Okay. So give Momochi some love. Thank you so much for sticking around. I'm glad you enjoyed it somewhat. I'll do better next time. And I'll look into Goosebumps. Yeah. So I hope you have a great rest of your day. Maybe potentially see you later. And yeah, bye, much love. Also, wait, before I leave, actually no, the credits do that for me. Thank you for the follows and the bits. Yes. Okay, now credits. Oh fuck, shit. Bye.